Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Praja Janaranjana Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Shodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Jai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Jai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada Nitai Gaur Premanande Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Shri Harinam Mahamantra Ki Shri Harinam Prabhu Ki Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Om Jnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Viditam Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Mami Hari Priye Vancha Kulpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Nitai Naminiche Namirhate Shadamulyanam Dite Chere Nitai Naminiche Namirhate Shadamulyanam Nitai Naminiche Namirhate Shadamulyanam Dite Chere Nitai Namirhate Shadamulyanam Dite Chere Nitai Namirhate Shadamulyanam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare
So let me first start tonight with reading a verse and purport from the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, which most of you are familiar with, but it's worth taking a second look. And we're going to talk a little bit about how relevant this verse is to us. Of course, every verse is relevant to us because we're devotees, but there's some very practical points in 15:15 that we should go over. Sarvasya chaham hridasannivishto mataksmitir jnanam apohanam cha vedaishcha sarver ahameva vedyo vedanta kridveda videva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. For all those who have ears, please listen. Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, when he begins his work, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back home, back to Godhead. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna, in his incarnation as Vyasadeva, is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of his activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul, Thus, God is all good. God is all merciful. Antapravishta shashta gnanam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yosau sarvar vedara giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads, and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 114 confirms this in the following words, Tattu samanvayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him. And at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. And first point to keep in mind is that the living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. And this means, among other things, that the reason that we can become Krishna conscious is because Krishna is conscious of us. The infinitesimal cannot reach the understanding of the infinite without the infinite's wish that he do so, without extending himself. One may say, how can the infinitesimal understand the infinite? And the only answer is when the infinite extends himself to the living entity. Atashi Krishna namadi na bhaved grayamindriye seva mukhi jivado swayameva spratyada. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medaya na bahuna shutena mami vaisha vrinute tena labhyas te shaish tashaisha vrinute tanum swam. The Padma Purana says that Krishna reveals himself to us according to our service to him, beginning with the tongue. And Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo means na medhaya, na bahuna, shrutena. We can't understand Krishna by our own endeavor. You may be very expert at speaking. You can sit down in an assembly, give lectures to thousands, millions of people. Doesn't mean Krishna will reveal himself. Bahuna shrutena, you may be very learned also, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He's known as the most learned person who ever lived. He knew every scripture by heart, memorized it all. Bahuna shrutena doesn't mean you can understand who Krishna or Lord Chaitanya is. And also, you may also nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medaya. You may be very intelligent, bahuna shrutena. Yami Vaisha Vrinute Tena Labhyas Tashaisha Eva Vrinute Tanun Swam. Tanun Swam means his own person, his own body, his own personality. He only reveals that to whomever he chooses. So this is a great secret in Krishna consciousness, because we describe this process of chanting Hare Krishna as the means to understand Krishna and to know him. It's a service to chant Krishna's names. We're glorifying him. It's kirtan. And we're serving him with our tongue. But how does it work, actually? This is described in our various shastras. First of all, in the Tattva Sandarbha and the Sarva Sambhadani, which is a very technical chapter, but necessary, obviously, for our sampradaya to be right on target, to have a siddhanta. Jiva Goswami explains that normally when we see something, we don't see it right away, because we have to comprehend it. We have to compare it to something. The way I thought of it recently is the way in which you'll notice picture recognition. What's it called? When your smartphone recognizes your picture. Someone put a picture of you up on their website.
Image recognition.
Huh?
Image recognition.
Image recognition. Yes, it's exactly what it is. This is called vikalpanam in the Tattva Sandarbha. There's a way that by pratyaksha vikalpana, you see something, but you don't, unless you become aware of it, you don't actually see it. Unless you know what it is, you can't comprehend it. And therefore, there's a two-stage process that takes place with the intelligence. And that process is you see a hummingbird, and then the intelligence goes through image recognition, latches onto it. It happens very quickly for most people. For me, it's slower. And then you recognize the hummingbird because you put it in a category, vikalpanam, and you say, oh yeah, that's a category of birds. I've seen hummingbirds before. My mother told me that's a ruby-throated hummingbird when I was a kid. There's a lightning flash of information that comes into you, and a comparison and image recognition that takes place when you look and you see the bird. So yes, okay, that's a bird. Your intelligence. Kapila Dev describes this also in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then, what is the process of chanting the holy name? Apana samsritin gauranya nama vivisho granan tata sadyo vimucheta yabhipeti swayam bayam. Say, this is not a vikalpanam. It's direct. And Jiva Goswami gives this example of the 10th man. There's a student in the class, and the teacher says, you count up how many people in the class. So actually, there's supposed to be 10 people in the class, including the teacher. The student says, there's 9 people. Teacher said, you forgot the 10th man, yourself. And then upon hearing those words, there's an instant cognition directly that, oh yeah, I'm the 10th man. And so he describes the way in which the holy name appears in our consciousness directly. And Krishna, as described in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam Gajendra, he's not a thing. He's not a person. He's not he goes through a long list, does Gajendra, of all the things that we have in our experience in this world. He's none of those things. He's beyond our comprehension who he is, but he reveals himself. But exactly how does that work? Because we also hear Vaisnava Mukungirnam Putam Harikatam Vratam Shravana Naiva Kartavyam Sarpotishta Yatapaya. Sanatana Goswami mentions this verse, and he says that somebody is speaking the holy names, but their motive is wrong. In other words, they think they're God. This is the candidate who's most apt to misinterpret the holy name and say it in such a way that it covers the appearance of the holy name. When someone who is ill-motivated And that is, their motivation is that I'm God. They're not thinking I'm going to serve God. Or they're not innocent, but they're very particularly motivated and they're anti-Krishna, but they're saying his name because they want to become him. Then he says, Sarvochisha yatopaya, that there's a way in which the vibration that comes from those people is covered. And he actually mentions it in the analogy. It's like a little dish of milk touched by the lips of a serpent. And then you're not going to drink that. It's all the snake drank for that. No, thanks. He left a little poison in there. On the other hand, we hear from Prithu Maharaj in the 4th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, when a pure devotee chants the holy name or speaks Krishna Katha, then because the motivation is pure, it's received through disciplic succession, there's a clear understanding that my constitutional position, I'm eternal servant of Krishna. And by association, one has developed this attitude of pure devotion towards the Lord, even if it's in a budding stage, and then speaks the holy name or speaks Krishna Katha. Especially for the very advanced devotee, then that sound vibration is described as touching Krishna's lotus feet. On Krishna's lotus feet, there are saffron particles. As if you do deity worship, you know, Krishna is the coolest person ever. And he wears saffron on his feet. There's chandan and tulsi leaves and so forth. Nobody else has that on their lotus feet. And then they mix with the sound vibration. And then when it comes in the ear, then the effect is profound. How can we understand that? We know that when Ravana stole away Sita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kaviraj Goswami reveals this to us in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He didn't actually steal Sita, but he got Maya Sita. You can't touch the internal energy if your motivation is to try to enjoy Krishna or try to enjoy Krishna's Shaktis. But to speak of stealing Sita Devi, kidnapping her, to try to enjoy her, he got the wrong Sita. He got Maya Sita. He thought he got the real Sita, but he didn't. And we also know that those who don't have devotion for Krishna don't see him as well. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he doesn't reveal himself to those who don't have devotion. And so if we receive the holy name through the process of disciplic succession from those who have the proper mood and attitude and motivation, speaking the holy name as it's coming down to us, then we get the manifestation of Krishna directly in our consciousness. So that means that meanwhile, when we're chanting the holy name, we have to also develop this attitude of pure service to the holy name and to Krishna. And that's why I felt it was important to read this sentence from the second line of the purport, where Prabhupada writes, the living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. And in the next point, and I'll only make a few points here and then we can have discussion, is that Prabhupada writes, required knowledge, it's in the next, the line after the one we just read, required knowledge is supplied to him and remembrance is given to him and he forgets also about his past life. So I like this phrase, required knowledge. So what is the definition of required? Just for the heck of it. Can't unmute. You're all locked up. Adjective required, officially compulsory, or otherwise considered essential. Okay, essential knowledge. that is considered essential. So in different phases of life, I considered different kinds of knowledge essential. For instance, some people, they get a life coach and they'll pay $85,000 to get a life coach because they feel it's essential. They need essential knowledge to make money. And so the life coach tells them how to get all set up so that they can make money and have a nicer house, a nicer car, and feel good about themselves and so forth. And that's required for them. That's what their desire is. Somebody else may require that they become famous, or somebody has more refined desires. They're thinking about how to do good for humanity. And then that required knowledge, it means I consider it essential. That's my desire. So Krishna fulfills my desire. He gives me the required knowledge according to what I desire. That's where it's coming from. So Krishna's noticing what I want. He's also very much aware of my mood. He's completely aware. So that's a double-edged sword. Someone might think, uh-oh, he actually knows what my inner workings are. On the other hand, someone may say, well, externally, I look like a mess. I look like I'm in an intractable situation here in the material world. I'm never going to get out. But we know from Bali Maharaj's pastime, although you can't get much more entangled than Bali Maharaj. He just conquered the whole universe. He beat up the demigods. He was a king of the world, king of the universe. And he was surrounded by demons. But then Vaman showed up. And that spark of devotional service for him awoke within his heart, in Bali's heart. And even though at the time he couldn't surrender, Krishna noticed. He knew exactly what Bali's intention was. He's going to surrender. And he did it. And therefore, Krishna is known and mentioned in this section as Bhava Grahi Janardana. He knows our bhava. What's our mood? That's okay. I was going to say so important. Scratch that. Put a big line, a Sharpie through it. It's all important. Hyphenate the word. It's all important to what my mood is towards Krishna, because externally it may appear that I'm a loser and I'm way behind. But if that mood of pure devotion, if I turn my attention towards Krishna in my heart, so it's internal cultivation. We have external cultivation in the world. We use our senses, sarvapari vinirmuktam taprapvena nirmalam, hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchate. We use our external senses in all kinds of ways to serve Krishna. Sometimes we don't have so much facility. We may be locked in a position of life where we feel stifled externally. I only can squeeze out, an hour and a half a day for my bhajan. The rest of the day, they've got me locked in. There ain't no cure for the summertime blues. And they got me working late. That's a theme song in the material world. Came from some early artist here in America. And they got me working late. That's the theme song of the conditioned soul in the material world. So I'm working, and how do I get out of that? Well, you can start applying your senses to your bhajan, but internally there are several ways that we cultivate the cheshta roop. Starting from the most basic idea that Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. He says that whatever work you're doing, you should consider, this is my prescribed work given to me by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I offer it to him. This is a very powerful meditation. And we can also cultivate the desire in our heart to serve Krishna. And Prabhupada mentions this. He said, if you can't do the service that your guru told you to do, he said, then you should have this mantra. Put it in a little pressure cooker. Anybody have a little pressure cooker? You all got one, right? You know how this works. You put it in there. You put the top on with your fingers crossed it doesn't explode, and you turn up the heat. And inside, it cooks much faster because of the pressure. So when we're under pressure in life, and then we cultivate in our heart, Prabhupada says, you use this mantra, how can I do, how can I do, how can I do? I want to serve my Guru, but I can't do it right now, he said.
This meeting is being recorded.
Just now only, it's being recorded. How can I do, how can I do, how can I do? And then also, Prabhupada mentions in the Nectar of Devotion about a Brahmana who was very poor. And he had no facility, but he heard in a lecture about how to do deity worship. So he started doing it in his meditations. Every day he was meditating on worshiping the deity, and he would bring Ganga water in gold pots. And he would sit down and do very loving puja for his worshipable deity. And every day he was feeling fulfilled. There's no difference, actually. And gradually, he became so advanced. And when he was making his naivedya, offering of bhoga to the Lord, idam naivedyam, and then he said the mula mantra for his deity, and he offered it. And he was thinking, oh, I think I made it too hot for the Lord. I didn't let it cool down enough. This is how intense his meditation was. So just to make sure, he touched it with his finger, and he burned his finger. And then Lord Narayan was chuckling when he saw his devotee recoil from the burnt finger, from the pain of touching that hot sweet rice. And his consort Lakshmi said, well, what's so funny? And he said, I'll show you. And then he sent an airplane, sent an Uber by to pick up his devotee and brought him back home, back to Godhead. This story is an indication of our internal cultivation. It goes on internally, externally. If you have a desire, but you can't completely fulfill it, put it in your pressure cooker. Meditate on that desire, worship it. You worship that order that you got from your guru that how can I do? How can I do? You pray over and over again. So you see, because Krishna will give you required knowledge. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To those who do this, that is, worship Krishna internally with their hearts. They're offering obeisances in their hearts to the order of the spiritual master and to the words that Krishna has spoken and that the Guru has spoken and the great acharyas have spoken. Jnane prayasa murapasya namante eva jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiyavartam stane stita shrutikatam tanuvan manobir, body, mind, and soul. They're worshiping the words. Then to such a person, Krishna gives all required knowledge. You want to become advanced in devotional service? You want to go to the stage of Nishta, and then Ruchi, and Asakti, and Bhava, and Prema? Krishna will give you the required knowledge and guidance and association to go there. We have to adjust our internal mood and make sure that's our desire, because he's fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. Saparyagat shukram akayamavranam ashnaviram shudam apapavidham kavirmanishi paribu swayambur yatat yat yatortan vyaradashasfatibhya samabhyaha. He's a self-sufficient philosopher who's been fulfilling every living entity's desire since a time immemorial. So Krishna is conscious of us. Lucky thing. Now we just have to turn our head towards Krishna and our desire towards Krishna. And even a little bit, even the tiniest molecule of desire, if we can locate it and say, yeah, I found it. I do have a desire. After all, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, if you're in mixed devotional service, that means pure bhakti is mixed with something. So the pure bhakti is in there. You find it. Make sure you find it. Locate that and put it in your pressure cooker. And you make a preparation from that. That's powerful. So now the last couple of points. And that is that the material world is a place of abnegation. I've abnegated my freedom. Can we have the definition, please? Abnegate. Make sure I'm using it correctly. You can put it in the chat. Something ab and then nagere. To renounce. Yes, we've renounced our freedom. So why do we not renounce our freedom? Well, first of all, what happens? I give up my freedom because freedom is actually, it requires responsibility. We're not dead stones. Oftentimes people say, well, why is Krishna so mean to me? Hey, you're a living entity too. You're the same quality as God. You can't blame anybody but yourself. That's a good thing. Don't take it the wrong way. That's a good thing. Because we're the same quality. We have powers too. We're not dead stones. And our freedom it requires responsibility. So when I give myself to the material nature, to Maya, then Krishna says, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. It's like, hey, I can't handle this freedom. I just surrender to the material nature and try to live in an alternative state of consciousness. I don't want to face it. I don't want to come to reality. That's why the Upanishads are all calling to us, Tamasi ma jyotirgamai. Wake up, come on, come back to the light, little jiva. It's reclaim your freedom. We see this in prisoners. Prisoners get what's called institutionalized. They go to prison, everything's decided for them. You wake up at this time, you go to sleep at this time. You eat this, there's no choice. You eat this, here are the rules, you have to follow all the rules, and this is all you get. And that's, it sounds horrible, but actually, when one abdicates one's freedom, that freedom takes responsibility. Then it's like, okay, that's what I like. And you get used to it. This is the conditioned soul. So then when they let the prisoner out, you know what they do? Many times they commit another crime just so they can go back in. I don't know the exact percentage of recidivism. Recidivism? Make sure I put the right number of syllables, please. However, it is a phenomena that is noticeable. It's measurable. It's something that's been studied. People become institutionalized. They want to go back in because that way they can just surrender themselves to the schedule. So the material world, conditioned soul, abnegates freedom. It's too much responsibility. And then here, just leave it to the material nature. Material nature dictates. However, because we're spiritual beings, we develop a serious psychological problem. It's described in the Bhagavatam. Bhayam dvitiya binibeshata, Bhayam dvitiya binibeshata syad isha apayetasya viparyo smriti. So what is that problem? We give up, we abnegate our freedom, our free life with Krishna. We turn away from him, we ignore him. Like, okay, there is no God. You know, this whole world just fell from the sky. Nobody created it. Nobody's taking care of me. It's all just happened by chance. This is ignorance of the fact that we have a lover who's taking care of us, who loves us, who's us like, forget it, I don't want to know him. So we turn our face away, and then we get dvitiya. we get this separate existence, and bhayam, fear arises. But here's where the fear and the confusion and all the anxiety comes from in our conditioned life. There's a phrase and a theory called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, somebody pull it off of Wikipedia and throw it up there, please. Cognitive dissonance. So a dissonance means, actually it comes from a word that means sound, like sonar, dissonance. There's resonance, there's dissonance. So dissonance means a discord. And what is the discord actually? We develop in our subconsciousness impressions, and they're discordant with our actual nature. These samskars are collected from our association with the material nature since time immemorial. Purusha prakritisto hi bhunte prakriti jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. We associate with the modes of nature by hearing different kinds of things. Goes in our ear, and then there's a kind of cacophony of vibrations that are impressed within us. And even though they're latent from many, many lifetimes, they come out and they create a dissonance of sound in our minds and in our hearts. And this, in our cognition of these differing vibrations, we become anxiety-ridden, confused, full of fear, because we don't know who we are. We're hearing all these different kinds of sound vibrations. So that comes to the second part of this purport. How, when we get re-inspired to turn our attention back to Krishna, do we overcome this cognitive dissonance? We may have experienced it, that we take up Krishna consciousness, but then there's all these other forces that are coming from within our own minds, our own subconscious minds, due to the samskars, the impressions left there by sound vibration. And now, how do we come back into resonance with the spiritual world, with our true nature as devotees of Krishna? That's from the perfective sound vibration that Krishna provides for us, first through the Srimad Bhagavatam. Anarto pasanam sakshad bhakti yogam and hoksajay lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. Vyasadeva, incarnation of Krishna, as mentioned here in this verse, deliberately compiled all the resonant sound vibrations of the spiritual world, tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin prati shlokam abhadyavat yapi, that will bring us back into resonance with Krishna, our desire to serve him. And it also brings all of the discordant samskars and sound vibrations that we've taken in errantly, and it sorts them all out. That's the power of the holy name. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Lord Chaitanya said, you chant Hare Krishna, and the mind, the heart, the chitta, your conscious mind and subconscious mind, they will become purified from these discordant sound vibrations. And when we come into resonance with Krishna, there's no problem. There is absolutely no problem. There never actually was. We're only distracting ourselves with these discordant vibrations that we've taken in by our misuse of freedom and abnegating our freedom foolishly. So it's important to remember a few points. One is that Krishna is conscious of us. He's supremely conscious of us. Kshetrajnam chapimam vidi sarva kshetrishu bharata kshetra kshetrajnayo jnanam yatash jnanam atam mama. Krishna says, know this for sure, that you're not your body. You are a unit of cognition, and I am aware of you. I know you. You may not think of me now, but you do know me, but you forgot. I don't forget. But Krishna knows us. Remember that, because we don't have to see God. We just have to act in such a way that he wants to see us. And if we just remember this one point, that Krishna is seeing me, he's fully conscious of me and my mood, and he even knows my motive. It's like a scent that comes from the entity. Krishna knows what that, oh, I know what that is. He knows it perfectly what it is. And he also knows exactly how to reciprocate with it. And this is the amazing part of the way Krishna set everything up. It's completely voluntary. He leaves it to us. Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshostina. I don't hate anybody. I don't like anybody. I'm equal to everyone. That's what he says as the Paramatma in the material world. But if you can, through the association of pure devotees and hearing from the Shastra, if you can develop one molecule of desire to serve Krishna, you put it in your pressure cooker, and you meditate, you make that your life and soul, your top priority on your page, and I hope you have one by now that has your priorities on it. Otherwise, if you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true? That's from the musical Self-Pacific. Then Krishna he'll move heaven and earth for you, for us, any living being. He'll move heaven and earth. And that's all we have to have. And we fan that spark within our hearts until it becomes a blaze. That's the only thing we want. And that's what advanced devotional service means. It means I don't want anything else. That's my only desire, because the cognitive dissonance is removed by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. For instance, I think I want to meet a beautiful girl in the park and run off and get a big house. Is this resonating with anybody? I want to meet a beautiful boy, beautiful girl. I want to meet the best singer, and we'll run off and buy and live happily ever after. This is the dream of the living entity. So Puranjana, we hear the story. He meets the girl of his dreams. She meets the man that can sweep her off her feet, and they have the conversation, and then they go off together. But just like Paul Newman got old and died, he was the most attractive movie star, or any fashion model gets old and everyone says, haha, what happened to you? You know, the whole material world eventually changes. The scene changes, and we're left holding an empty bag again and again and again and again and again and again and again. So Bhagavatam's rearranging our priorities for us, saying, not this, not that. Look at what happens. Here's the narrative. Listen to this story. Don't listen to the other stories that people are telling you. This is the only story you need to hear, is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And when you come to the end of that, you're fully convicted that this is my prime goal of life. And so, Srinvatam Swa Kata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantaksto Hibadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Krishna's there as a Surit, and the Vidunoti, he's helping us within the heart. And he's like, okay, I see you're listening to this. You want to come to this perfect point of a sharp desire, increased desire to serve me, I'll help you. And then Rupa Goswami says, then you've got the ticket. Krishna Bhakti Ras Bhavito Mati Kriyatan Yadi Krito Pilabhyate Tataloyam Api Mulyamekaram Janmakoti Sukritirna Labhyate. Means you can be a good person for millions of lifetimes, and it doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. But if you can get a little desire in your heart burning, that I want to be a devotee, I want this more than anything else, that's the ticket that gets us to attract Krishna, because he'll respond immediately and start moving everything in our direction. Then ye bhajanti tumam bhakta mai te teshu chapyaham. Then we live in Krishna and Krishna lives in us. And we come to the perfection of our lives. Om Tat Sat. Now let's see if we have anything on the Jumbotron here. I'm going to pull up the question and answer board, comment board. Oops. And it is empty. All right, let's see if we have any reflections or questions to expand the conversation. Reflect. Manjulakanta, you have an inquiring look on your face. Oh, and okay, we got a hand up from Sukeshri. Go ahead.
Manjula can go, Prabhu. I go after her. Go ahead. Manjula, you have a question?
I was just thinking, Maharaj, that, when we, just a second. I was just thinking, Maharaj, that you were explaining this concept, and in the process, I was wondering that, along the way in this path, many times we stop and look back and try to reassess that we should have made these changes or choices. But the more I look back, the more I realize it wasn't worth the effort. There's so much more to look forward to in Krishna consciousness. And COVID has taught us that. This whole process teaches us. Today when we went to the temple for darshan, I was thinking that all these opportunities that we were given, we took them so much for granted. This opportunity for service, this opportunity for association. And having been given all that and then denied it, there's so much of a deeper respect for what we've received. Just as you were saying that, if we don't hold on to it now, when will we make that commitment? So it was really nice to hear what you were saying. And that was my thought. That was my reflection, that when we do get back to service, how much more commitment we should give to it and how much less resistance we should put in to all the good stuff that Srimad Bhagavatam is telling us. Because, we can see for ourselves how difficult it is, how much these promises turn out to be empty in the end.
Sure. And this is a conversation that comes up in the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam with Narada Muni and the Prajapati, Daksha. There's this perennial conversation about renunciation, pravritti marg and nivritti marg. And in it, it's worth noting that Daksha feels that his sons, first the 10,000 and then the 1,000, should go through the path of fruitive activity and go through all the complications of the material world, because then they'll become tired of it. And Narada Muni tells his sons, he didn't go directly to Daksha, he just went straight to them where they were doing their austerity. He said, hey, you're already getting purified out here. You might as well just go for bhakti and give all this nonsense up. And they were very intelligent. They understood, and they went into the direct path. And Prabhupada gives this conundrum that often comes up, and that is that Daksha will say that unless you enjoy the material world, you're not going to be able to have your fill and get exhausted by it. Therefore, you should try for it. But then Prabhupada says, yeah, but, practically every woman during the pain of childbirth says, I'll never do this again. And then, hey, how many kids you got? 11. So this is a feature of the material world that we forget. And hope springs eternal, if we're trying to enjoy the material. But when we really become materially exhausted, this is what Queen Kunti says, this is for the materially exhausted. When you've really had it, and it's a memory in your heart that you say, no mas, that's it. I'm not doing this again. I'm putting it all into Krishna. This is the beginning of lalyam, the beginning of this greed, that I have to have this. It's the most important. And then we get serious. You can see it in our activities and our countenances and so forth. That's why we take the bhajana kriya. We have had it. And we go like that. I've been taking the wrong path for so long. Now I'm going down this one. I'm following the devotees. And so what you're describing is a sign of advancement. when that conviction arises in the heart that no mas, and I'm not wasting any more time either. And then there may be a lag time also. Krishna does this so we remember, because we may get the desire before we get the facility. And then we're in a good place to put that in the pressure cooker, because it's really hard when you know you want to go for it. It's like, how am I going to get out of this? And I mean, even Rupa and Sanatan, it took them a year. At least Sanatan got out of there right away. Rupa and Sanatan, it was more than a year before he could escape the jail and the whole thing. Look at Raghunath Das. Getting out of the material world is not so easy. And so if it was easy, we just keep one foot in each world and say, it's no big deal. I'll just have the best of both worlds. And we never give it up. But it's so sticky and troublesome, the material world. It's like, hey, I barely touched it and I got smashed. Krishna's mercy. He's reminding us of like, hey, didn't you want to be serious, little Jiva? Wasn't that you last week who said no mas? It's like, get your little fingers out of the jar and just, be serious. Okay, so we've got Gandharvika Radha had her hand up, I think. Did she just? Oh, there you are. And then we have Sundarananda. And okay, please go ahead.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhu, I was just showing the sad face because with the example that you said, how no matter how much we undergo pain in this world, we just forget and do the same thing again. And that's so sad. And the point that you mentioned, how the vibrations of Krishna removes the samskaras in our hearts, that gave me some confidence that, okay, even though it seems like I can never overcome that, but that a name and the sound vibrations that coming from Krishna is helping us. But one question that I had is, Prabhu, how is it, how do we maintain that focus all the time? Because material nature sometimes is coming, your reactions are coming very forceful upon you. So we need some strength to stick to what we want, and that too with grace. So how do we do that?
The best is through association. When we keep association with strong devotees, then we feel strong also. And Purusha Prakritisto hi bhunte Prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sarasadyoni janvasu. By the same token, all our implications in the material world have come from our associations with the different modes of nature that come through people we hang out with. So choose your association very carefully and do your reps. When we're in Vaidhi Bhakti, you have to do your reps. Every day you got to do your reps. Later it will turn into longing. Later it turns into lalyam. This is the second stage of devotional service. When we develop this intense longing, it will come. It's very natural. It's already there, but it has to be reawakened in the beginning. Do your repetitions. Don't get sloppy. And you'll get strength from that. You get strength from keeping your numerical quota at the top level. And you notice it in devotees who keep themselves at that level. If you're hearing and chanting, get your bhajan on and do it every day, and don't let anything get in your way. Be like an athlete. You watch athletes, they're getting ready for the what is there? The World Cup. I don't know what there is now. The US Open. Olympics, yeah. Olympics, US Open. All that, they don't mess around. They're out there doing their craft, their sport every day, working out. We have to be like that. Become a spiritual athlete in the beginning and get serious. And if you don't know what it looks like, just check out some Olympic athletes on YouTube and see what they do. They don't get good like that for nothing, or great musicians. They're doing their practice 5-6 hours a day, and because they're into it. And then, like one teacher once told me, he said, amateurs practice until, how's it go? Amateurs practice. Okay, amateurs practice till they get it right. Professionals practice till they never get it wrong. So be on the second, on the latter side. Practice so you never get it wrong, and that's our prerogative as humans. We're really good at practice because we can get in that groove and just go for it. So get convinced that this is the right practice for you, and then make it happen. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Good to see you. I think we had a Shraya Madhava next, and then it goes over to Nam Chintamani. Somebody help me out with this, because it's like moving squares. Somebody signs up. I'm going to talk to the Zoom people later. I think they need a new feature. Either that
Yes,
or it
Maharaj.
requires an IQ, which would count me out. Okay, go ahead.
Yep, they need a new feature. I agree with you. It's like a small number next to each of the hands.
Yes.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you. Very important topic you're talking about. So a couple of things. There are some reflections on the board. So that is one thing I wanted to point out. The second was, we do our chanting, all the 16 rounds, and then we do our deity worship. And after that, we get, throughout the day, we get complacent. We think, okay, we have done our things. And then if we start doing, our material nonsense, then we just are under that false sense of protection that we are protected because we have done all these things. But we are not really protected if we willingly go and do our material nonsense. So what I'm getting from you, Maharaj, is that we have to be careful that, if our mind is attracted towards that material nonsense because of that complacency, then we keep doing those things like the chanting, we continue chanting. So we don't give opportunity to our mind. I don't know if I'm getting that right. We keep doing it so that, we don't do that nonsense.
Do the best you can with what you have right now, but lean into the parts that you can really do. Because there's a ton of nonsense already in there. No wonder it comes out. That's the samskars. Someone just sang me the Brill Cream ad from 1965 the other day. They know all the words, and they're like in their late 70s. Brill Cream is kind of hair cream.
Yeah.
There's an advertisement, and those things are in there for millions of lifetimes. So you also can't get disappointed, and you also can't act above your adhikari. Then suddenly it's like, I'm a pure devotee. I'm going to, go around the house and chastise everybody because you looked at me weird. Do your level best with what you have. And there is a kind of protection. No, we shouldn't do nonsense. And we shouldn't think, because I did my bhajan, now I can do nonsense. But if you're already in the material world to some degree and your mind's still putting out all kinds of stuff and it comes up, don't freak out. Just keep showing up for your bhajan, because very soon it will rewrite all that stuff. And if you get the right association and you stay in your practice, then you're going to be successful very quickly.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, who is next? Namich and Tamini, I think.
Hi, Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Hi.
I really resonated with a lot of things you said today. Thank you so much for answering my questions. And I have a lot of reflections that I've written down that I'd just like to read a few points.
Okay.
You said really resonated. So one was that Krishna wears saffron on his feet, and there's saffron particles that mix with the pure devotee sun vibration. That was really powerful. And Krishna knows what I want, and he's aware of my mood, and he sees me, and that my mood is all important. That was really powerful. And Krishna gives all required knowledge, guidance, and association. And the pressure cooker analogy was very powerful. So thank you for that.
Thank you for those reflections. Very much so. I appreciate it. Here's the verse. If you're keeping score at home, 4:20:25, Prithu Maharaj says, "My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee." And Prabhupada writes in the purport, "It is explained in the previous verse that one has to hear glorification of the Lord from the mouth of pure devotees, from a pure devotee. This is further explained here. The transcendental vibration from the mouth of a pure devotee is so powerful that it can revive the living entity's memory of his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In our material existence, under the influence of illusory Maya, we have almost forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord, exactly like a man sleeping very deeply who forgets his duties. In the Vedas, it is said that every one of us is sleeping under the influence of Maya. We must get up from this slumber and engage in the right service, for thus we can properly utilize the facility of this human form of life. As expressed in a song by Thakur Bhaktivinoda, Lord Chaitanya says, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. The Lord asks every sleeping living entity to get up and engage in devotional service so that his mission in this human form of life may be fulfilled. This awakening voice comes through the mouth of a pure devotee. A pure devotee always engages in the service of the Lord, taking shelter of his lotus feet. And therefore, he has a direct connection with the saffron mercy particles that are strewn over the lotus feet of the Lord. Although when a pure devotee speaks, the articulation of his voice may resemble the sound of this material sky. The voice is spiritually very powerful because it touches the particles of saffron dust on the lotus feet of the Lord. As soon as a sleeping living entity hears the powerful voice emanating from the mouth of a pure devotee, he immediately remembers his eternal relationship with the Lord. Although up to that moment, he had forgotten everything. For a conditioned soul, therefore, it is very important to hear from the mouth of a pure devotee who is fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord without any material desire, speculative knowledge, or contamination of the modes of material nature. Every one of us is kuyogi because we have engaged in the service of this material world, forgetting our eternal relationship with the Lord as his eternal loving servants. It is our duty to rise from the Ku-yoga platform to become Su-yogis, perfect mystics. The process of hearing from a pure devotee is recommended in all Vedic scriptures, especially by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One may stay in his position of life, it does not matter what it is, but if one hears from the mouth of a pure devotee, he gradually comes to the understanding of his relationship with the Lord and thus engages in his loving service, and his life becomes completely perfect. Therefore, this process of hearing from the mouth of a pure devotee is very important in making progress in the line of spiritual understanding. Okay, now we have, who do we have? Somebody keep track for me, please. Manjula Kanta, you're in charge. Oh, Sukeshri. Okay, Sukeshri, go ahead.
Prabhu, when you mentioned about when Krishna, when you really want to surrender, Krishna will make the heaven and earth. He'll do anything you want. I was remembering the Gopakumara story when I first read it. When actually Gopakumara meets Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, he says that I waited for you for so long, and it didn't seem like anything is working. I made sure you were born in Govardhan, and I made sure I sent you a spiritual master called Jayanta, and I'm so happy. So when I first read that, I went back and again read it twice. I thought it was Gopakumara telling Krishna, but then later I realized it's Krishna telling Gopakumara that how much he was waiting for Gopakumara to come back. So it just I was just rethinking that part, that how much Krishna loves us, and as you said, he will do anything, like, so that the souls from the material world can come back to spiritual world. Thank you.
This is cognitive dissonance in that I think I've been abandoned and Krishna's punishing me or something. And generally, when devotees hear these couple of sections from the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, where Krishna is personally embracing Gopakumar, welcoming back to the spiritual world, saying, I waited for you. And you can see Krishna, what Prabhupada says in 1.2.17 of the Bhagavatam, that Krishna wants us to come back more than we can desire. Devotees generally start weeping, genuinely. And they can't help themselves. I've seen it so many times when we read that Brihat Bhagavatamrita and we come to that section, and I just look up around the room. I mean, I'm holding back tears. I look up and I think I'm a sahaja, here I go. And then I look up and I say, like, everybody's crying. And it's spontaneous, because this is the one psychological problem we have. We've forgotten Krishna. And when we realize actually he wants us back more than we can desire, we just break down. And we have all the feelings come rushing in. Like you were saying, Gandharvika Radha, that it's like, what have I been doing? Why have I been keeping Krishna waiting? And actually, you said it, Manjula Kanta, it's like wasting time here in the material world. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, call in the next person, please. I'm out of the calling on process.
We had
I've
Harry.
retired.
We had Harry and then Sadhu Vrindavan.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vaisheshika Prabhu, is it possible you can read from Srimad Bhagavatam 8.3.17, the last paragraph of the purport? I think it's very appropriate for what you just said.
Yes, Prabhu, I'll do it. Just now I'm doing. 8.3.17?
Yes, the last paragraph of the purport.
Okay. Eight, 3:17, Gajendra's prayers. Yes. Only Krishna can deliver us from material existence. Indeed, he is always trying to deliver us. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridasherdrunatishtati. He is within our hearts and is not at all inattentive. His only aim is to deliver us from material life. It is not that he becomes attentive to us only when we offer prayers to him. Even before we offer our prayers, he incessantly tries to deliver us. He is never lazy in regard to our deliverance. Therefore, this verse says, Buddhi Karunaya Namo Layaya. It is the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord that he always tries to bring us back home, back to Godhead. God is liberated and he tries to make us liberated. But although he is constantly trying, we refuse to accept his instructions. Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. Nonetheless, he has not become angry. Therefore, he is described here as Buddhi Karunaya, unlimitedly merciful in delivering us from this miserable material condition of life and taking us back home, back to Godhead. Thank you, Prabhu. That was perfectly placed.
Sadhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Sadhu Vrindavan.
So I was just thinking about a saying, which is even if you give $1 million, you can't million or $1 trillion, you can't really go back in time or revisit the past. So I was thinking that I've been wasting so much time in this material world, discriminating. Oh, I should, when I'm like I should chant now, I'd be like, oh no, let me do something else. So I was just thinking how it's harder to become pure when you're attached to these material desires. But when but the lucky thing is that in the material world, even if you chant one mantra of Hare Krishna with pure devotion, then Krishna will actually you will be so satisfied that you would want to do it again and again and again. And if you take one step toward Krishna, you take 100 steps towards you, which makes it easier for you to actually become more pure. Because in the Treta Yuga, when Dasharatha, he wanted kids, and Rishi Shringa, he told Dasharatha to first perform the Ashwamedha Yajna for to become pure, to actually perform the Putra Kameshti Yajna for getting kids. And it almost took Dasharatha 1 year, as I heard, 1 year to complete the Ashwamedha Yajna. But here in the Kali Yuga, the chanting of the holy name, even if you chant one Mahamantra of the holy name with intensity and devotion to the Lord, you would actually develop pure love for Krishna, and it'd be easier for you to eventually go back home, back to Godhead. So
Sadhu. You know, we read in Girish Maharaj's new book. Do any of you have it? You do?
I do have it, Prabhu. I just
You
bought
do?
it.
Are you all reading it? Better
Yeah.
hurry up, because I'm going to be the first one to finish. Yeah, we read the other night about how Prabhupada was sitting with the devotees, and he took one Maha sweet ball and he popped it in his mouth, and he said, the yogis, they meditate for so many years, thousands of years. He said, with one sweet ball, we can come to the perfect stage. Thank you. Very nicely done, Sadhu. Okay, who's next? That's it. We cleared the board.
It was Avantika,
Keshri.
but she's not here right now. So then there's Madhav Purtapal.
Okay, thank you.
We have someone. Madhav going Prabhu. Is there anyone else?
I just wanted to comment, Prabhu.
Yes?
I just wanted to say that, I've been seeing Sadhu Vrindavan since he was so little, and, I realized that actually soul doesn't have age, and, so much of things, and recently we had a Ramayana contest. While I was interviewing the finalists, Sadhu got the first place. But I was just thinking that there are so many stories in Ramayana that I was not aware till as part of this contest and working on it. I felt that so much of knowledge he has about Ramayana, about such complicated names and connections with so many different stories. At that moment, I felt that, it's not the body's age that matters. I just wanted to comment that. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Sadhu's always been a sadhu. Ever since I've known him as a little tiny baby, he was a sadhu. Okay, I think it's Madhava Govinda and then Avantika.
Thank you so much for
Hey, Madhava Govinda, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, sorry for long time no talk. Good to see you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class. Actually, I was really inspired. Somehow, the point which you mentioned about cognitive dissonance, it really stuck with me. I was thinking that it's so natural and very easy for us to, get into that zone of, have the discord actually. But I think, as you mentioned later on, that when we do keep doing our repetitions on a regular basis, on a daily basis, that can help us to actually come back to the resonance, the cognitive resonance that you mentioned. So
It's so easy to get into cognitive dissonance, but so easy to get out of it. And that's a revelation, because anyone, like my friend Divyanga, he reads every day at least 18 pages of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he always says, okay, I read my pages, and every single time I feel lifted, uplifted. The resonance is there naturally. We feel it directly, we see it directly. It's pratyakshavagamam dharmyam. It's the perfection of religion because we see it directly ourselves. If it was theoretical, we would be not satisfied. But when we hear and chant, we know that naturally we feel jnana and vairagya as comes as byproducts, and we come back into resonance and residence of the spiritual world eventually. Thank you very much, Madhava Govinda.
thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Avantika.
Hare Krishna. So I was just reflecting on the points you were saying in that purport we just read about how Krishna's one-sided love for us, or not for everyone, one-sided love, I guess for me, one-sided love is so strong. And I was just thinking that he loves us so much that even when we wanted to leave him, he fully facilitated that desire. And he created a world for us, not only a world, universes And even in those universes, we always will get what we want. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Yamyam vapi smaran bhavam. At the end of our lives, whatever our heart's desire is, we will always go there. So he's still fulfilling our desires, even if it's like not with him. Like if our hearts are craving for like Vaishnava association as well as his association, we have the opportunity to go back to Goloka. But if we don't, we'll still get birth in another world that matches our desires. And he loves us so much that when we say, sorry, Krishna, I can't deal with you right now, he says, okay, forget me. I will give full facilitation for your forgetfulness. And he even gives remembrance and forgetfulness. And through this, like giving forgetfulness, he's even considered merciful to the atheists, because even they're getting what they want. They're not thinking about Krishna, they forgot him. And then on top of all of this, he still can't let us go. And he's been sitting in our heart, remaining silent only because we chose to silence him. And he's still like waiting for us and wants to look out for us and make sure we're okay, just in case that one magical day we decide to turn back to him. So I was just really thinking about that.
That's something nice to be thinking about, and well said. You're all loaded up. You've been hearing and chanting a lot. It all comes out. Thank you very much, Avantika. These are very important points to remember Krishna's personality and how he's the Suhrit, the best friend. He's, as you said, he loves us so much, he comes with us, even as we make our sojourn in the material world. And he's always fulfilling our desire. But when we come into the material world, then we also get what we deserve. We may desire, but we also have to get what we deserve. So there's a way in which like if a kid runs away from home, from his perfectly benevolent and well facilitating or just facilitating parents, and then gets lost and taken in a bad foster home where he's neglected, abused, and so forth. This is the condition of the little jiva. We leave our well-wisher, eternal protector, and go into the custody of Maya, who has that three-pronged instrument, Adhyatmik, Adhibautik, and Adhidaivik. And that's an unnatural, very awkward situation for the living entity. Yeah, so your point about reforming desire. This is our process. Okay, that's it. We cleared the board, I think. And I left a bunch on the board here. You want me to just do a couple more quickly, succinctly? Or should we just stop right now? Yeah, right. What are you going to say? Okay.
A couple more.
Okay, a couple more. Okay, question from Anonymous says, although one's or mine main objective in life is to surrender to Krishna, I keep slipping off and feel like I'm cheating Krishna because I feel I only externally say, Krishna, I need you, but internally I'm not actually trying as much as I say. How do I actually stop cheating Krishna and myself as well? Well, that question itself reveals an internal process that everyone goes through in anartha nivritti, where we try to catch up to what desire we actually noticed. And we may have some inspiration to become Krishna conscious, and then we start on the path, and then there's a way in which other forces in our world catch up to us. This happens quite frequently. And then we have to then boil it down and re-examine what's most important to me. Because remember, in the end, what's most important is my strong desire. And oftentimes these situations where we're tested, I said I'd keep it short. Let's see if I can actually do it. When we're getting tested, Krishna's seeing, what do you actually want? And also, there is a stage in which, although we do have a desire to serve Krishna, we're overwhelmed by the samskars of our previous life. We're carried by momentum from previous experiences. Jatashraddha makatasu nirvina sarvakarmasu veda dukkha makankamam prityagi pyanishvara. Krishna describes how the person is fully convinced about devotional service and is going for it, but at the same time can't stop the momentum yet of his or her previous material desires and feels quite regularly overwhelmed by those. So then he says, don't become discouraged. Just know that if you continue, then you'll overcome. Because what's more powerful, your karma and the momentum of your previous desires, or the holy name? A or B? B. The second question, why is it so hard to get rid of our previous impressions and samskars, which seems so deep-rooted even after practicing devotional service? It takes time. You got to be patient. It takes time. You got to be patient. That was a quick answer. I'm impressed with myself. I really appreciated the way you phrased ignorance. Ignore ends. Gopal Hari Prabhu was mentioning the other day that every faith has a key problem it focuses on solving. Christianity's key problem is evil. Specifically, he mentioned that the Vedic worldview's key problem is ignorance. I was both impressed and a little bit confused, since I felt that seemed to focus on a knowledge-oriented viewpoint. But the way you put it, I thought that was the perfect resolution. Our ignorance is a choice to ignore Krishna. So solving ignorance means gaining not just blunt knowledge, but realization or vijnana, which really brings us close to Krishna so we can stop being ignorant. Yeah, there's data, then there's information, then there's knowledge, then there's wisdom. It goes through a processing system, and you only come to wisdom when you apply everything and Krishna descends, gives us the inspiration from within. Mantra Siddhi gives us reflection, like the point that Krishna is seeing us. If we keep this in mind, life will become so simple. Nice point, Mantra Siddhi. Good to hear from you. A couple more anonymous. A question: how to deal with materially motivated devotees while we can't stay away from them and still want spiritual progress, or both ourselves and them. Srila Govinda Maharaj, who is the direct disciple successor of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, used to say, my religion is finding my own faults, finding the faults within myself. It's a really fun occupation. Everyone should try it. Just try to count them all up and make an inventory of all your faults. And you'll be so busy, at least I am, that you won't even notice the faults in others. And finally, a power phrase from Anonymous says, keep on keeping on. That sounds good. So we should end it because it's into the wee hours of the night here. Do you have a quick point, Prashant? And
Harry.
Huh?
It says Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu?
Yes, sorry. Tomorrow is the disappearance day of Jayananda Prabhu. Is it possible you could say something about him? I know it's late. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Jayananda Prabhu?
It's his disappearance day tomorrow.
He's the first devotee I ever met. Well, third devotee. First devotee I met was Krita Karma. Second devotee I met was Jambavan, and then Jayananda. I joined the temple the day after Rath Yatra. I had no idea there was a Rath Yatra. They were putting away the wheels in the big garage next to our temple, and Jayananda Prabhu asked if I wanted to help. And he was our Bhakta leader. He was my Bhakta leader, Jayananda Prabhu. I didn't know he was the most advanced devotee because he was so humble. We love Jayananda. He was a leader by example. And my impression of the movement was that, oh yeah, you just do pure devotional service. Now, if you didn't get the chance to see Jayananda, what's his name in Los Angeles? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name right now. He's constantly doing service with, overalls on.
Ratnabhushan.
Yeah.
Bhushan. Yeah. So one day, Madhudrisha Prabhu, who was so close with Jayananda. I mean, so then he said, for all of you, it was at a Prabhupada festival, so any of you who didn't get a chance to see Jayananda, go follow Ratnabhushan around and watch him, and you'll get an idea what Jayananda Prabhu was like. Keshav Bharti Maharaj, who's very dear to all the devotees here, he was really close with Jayananda Prabhu. In fact, they shared the same apartment for years. And when Prabhupada came to San Francisco, the couple times when I was there, they'd move out of their apartment. They'd paint it every time before he'd come. And then Prabhupada would move in. That's where I first met him. And then Jayananda Prabhu, he never tried to push towards the front, although that became a sport by that time in 1973. The more senior devotees would huddle around Prabhupada. And then, when he came in the room, sat down and so forth. But Jayananda Prabhu always sat in the back. And Prabhupada always noticed him first because of his service mood. And from the very beginning, Jayananda Prabhu gave money for Prabhupada to print, was it Nectar Devotion? And Prabhupada mentions him in there. He took out the $5,000 that he needed and gave it. He was selfless servant, Jayananda Prabhu. And one of the traits Jayananda Prabhu had was that he made friends with everybody. You know how we talk about always leave everyone with a good impression? That was Jayananda. Everyone who met Jayananda Prabhu, they felt like they met the nicest person in the world. And after he did festivals, he'd put on these big festivals. We had festivals in Berkeley. We had them in San Francisco. We had the Rath Yatras. And he would work and work and work to make sure the festival went off. And then after it, he'd go around to all the people, anyone any of the vendors who sold us things or helped or donated bananas or whatever it was. And he'd always bring them some really nice prasadam, like a cake or something like that. And everybody remembered him lovingly. I just remember one time after Radha Damodar, he got on one of the buses and I saw him. I had already left San Francisco. I was on another traveling party. We met up on the East Coast, and one of the sannyasis, good stuff was rare back then, like nice chutters and stuff. One of them had bought a silk Harinam chutter. Pretty much a rare item at that time. Now you can get anything through Amazon Prime or whatever. But back then, good devotional stuff was it was hard to get because we didn't have any money anyway. And anyway, so then I just remember being we were at somebody's house or someplace, all the traveling parties were there. And we were with Jayananda. I was enjoying being in his company. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj came over and gave him this silk Harinam chutter because everyone loved Jayananda. So Jayananda, he was very strongly built and tall and, hard worker. His hands always had some kind of stain on it from working under cars and fixing everything and hammering and whatever. Anyway, the silk chutter, when he put it on, it looked like, some people just have a flair. They put something on, and they look, they look like, when Jayananda put it on, it kind of looked like, it was just hanging off him. It wouldn't stay on him the right way. And, he looked embarrassed. Is this too nice for me? That was, I could tell that was, the way he accepted it because they gave it to him, but he's like, it's too nice for me. It's like, this isn't, I can't wear something like this. I'm so, insignificant. That was his mood always. And then I remember I went outside and I came back and somebody else had the chutter. He gave it away. He gave it away so fast and just looked satisfied then, not having it. So Jayananda Prabhu, he left the world with Prabhupada as a tape recorder in Los Angeles before Prabhupada left, actually. And Prabhupada, Rameshwar was there. He gave him the tape recorder with Prabhupada chanting. And he said it was the last few hours were very, very hard. You know, he was in a lot of pain, but he was so strong spiritually and physically that, you know, he screwed up all his energy and pulled it together at the last minute. It was just, had the tape recorder going right on his ear. And he was like fully putting his energy into remembering Krishna and Prabhupada at the last minutes. And then he left his body, and Prabhupada wrote the letter, you know, glorifying Jayananda Prabhu. And interestingly also, when Prabhupada would write a letter about somebody leaving, like I remember when my grandmother left her body, and I went to a Catholic church for her funeral ceremony, and the priest said, yeah, she's in a better place now and she's smiling on us. And I was like, how do you know? Let's hear some pramanam from the Shastra on that one. I wasn't too sure. No offense, Grandma, but you know, but Prabhupada said, if you were thinking of Krishna, you know, then you'll go back to Godhead. If you somehow you weren't thinking of Krishna, you go to the heavenly planets, come back, and you'll take birth in the family of great devotee, and you'll continue your devotional service. He was very unsentimental when he would present it, you know, somebody leaving, but he loved Jayananda. We all saw it, and Jayananda was a selfless servant, and I feel very lucky to have had his association in those early days. I thought that's just how you're supposed to be. He took such good care of us. We used to go on Harinam every day. That was our new Bhakti program. We had this big red van, and it was a big red step van. There were no seats in it. It was just a big square van, red van. And somebody would drive, and we'd all pile in the back. And we go different places in San Francisco, Market and Powell. We went over to Berkeley. We'd be on the campus in Berkeley. And Jayananda would take us out. He loved Harinam. He loved Harinam. He'd play all day long. I mean, we went out for hours and hours and hours every day. And sometimes I remember he had this trick he got from Vishnu Jana Swami of taping like pennies on his hand so he could get more traction on the drum and not wear his fingers down and stuff. And then he'd feed us. We'd either bring prasadam, or sometimes Jayananda would go into the store, and one of the things he'd always feed us is buttermilk and bananas. So he'd get, you know, these big containers of buttermilk, and he'd get bananas and, you know, put out like a chutter or something like that, or something. We didn't have chutters back then, but, you know, something. And then he'd open them up and he'd do like an offering. And then he'd feed us the buttermilk and bananas when we were out on Sankirtan, and we go out for a few more hours. And, you know, he was older than all of us. So it was kind of like having our dad there or something, you know. He was a leader by seniority and by his qualities, his humility. Really miss him. You know, and it's like so fortunate. There's a picture of Jayananda Prabhu. Keshav Bharati Maharaj tells in New York, we were at 340 West 55th in New York, and the last Rath Yatra, we were there with Prabhupada. 1976, Prabhupada came there. We were all there with Prabhupada. And Jayananda Prabhu, he already had lymphoma. Back then, it wasn't as treatable as it is now. They didn't have the technology. And Jayananda didn't want anybody to know that he was getting these big, huge lymph swelling up in his body, because he didn't want to miss his service for the Rath Yatra, for putting it on for Prabhupada. And although he was in pain, nobody knew it, because he danced through the whole thing, because he was so ecstatic that Prabhupada came to the Rath Yatra. And then afterwards, Keshav Bharati Maharaj caught him in the ashram. He saw him doubled over in pain. He said, Jayananda, you come here, you tell me what's happening, what's going on with you. And Jayananda said, you can't tell anybody. Actually, that was before Rath Yatra. He said, you can't tell anybody, because he knew the devotees would gang up on him and make him miss his service. And he showed him under his arm, he had these huge swollen glands from the cancer. And then Jayananda Prabhu, he went to a few places to try to get rid of it. There were some alternative cures, but the only reason he went there is because the devotees insisted. You know, you have to try this and that. And till the last minute, he was his humble, affable self. And, you know, he's the only devotee we have in our movement that's that Prabhupada put on the calendar to celebrate the disappearance of. So he's a really special soul, one of those great devotees who appeared to help Prabhupada. And there's lots of other stories. There's whole books written about Jayananda Prabhu, but now that I'm talking about him, I'm starting to miss him really a lot and just remembering his association. So thanks for reminding us, Prabhu, of Jayananda. We have an expert Vaishnava on here who's helping us to enjoy the mellows.
Wrong information, wrong information.
Relish the mellows. Hare Krishna. Okay, last one for sure. We have Prashant Prabhu.
Prashant. Hare Krishna Maharaj and Hare Krishna to all devotees. Dandavat Pranam. You would be surprised to know about me. I have connected from Australia right now.
Haribo.
From the Melbourne ISKCON devotee community. So my humble obeisances to all of you. And Maharaj and everybody, when I connected to this group, I immediately felt I'm at home. And it's really lovely to see all of you, all the devotee, our community that's so far away from Australia. So it's really, really nice and such a nice class, Maharaj. And such a nice questions and answers. So it's so I immediately felt at home. I feel like I know all of you for long time. So thank you so much. And also just to on the Maharaj Janan Prabhu's point, there is to be Rath Yatra here locally in Melbourne, Australia, and there is always photo of Janan Prabhu on that. And I did wonder that who is this devotee, because I did not know much about that. And now by grace of Krishna and Maharaj, now I know. So the photo, the person's photo that they put it on the altar on the Rath Yatra is Jayanand Prabhu. So thank you so much, Maharaj. And without further ado, Maharaj, my brother's family lives in San Francisco, in Cupertino, and I have a sister-in-law, and I've got niece and nephew there. So currently they are going through a very tough time. So as you can see, the COVID situation is just playing a lot of difficulties to everyone. So they're also going through a very tough time. So I've been kind of helping them and trying to give them some spiritual connection as well. So with that regard, like I ordered quite a lot of Prabhupada's book over the Krishna Store website and got it delivered to them. They are appreciating it. And I feel that they need some personal connection, personal association. So other day I was talking to my sister-in-law. She had been to your temple, some time ago, I think pre-COVID era, and she got the blessing of to do some service there as well. And now I'm looking for some, personal touch for them from our wonderful local community. Like if somebody can reach out to them and with some prasadam, and if the COVID situation or local laws allows, if they can do some kirtan at our home and help us, to give that personal touch and help them to connect with our very wonderful local community there. So
okay, Prashant Prabhu, we'll get your somebody please grab his email, and then we can figure out how to take care of his dear relatives here that are here with prasadam and inviting them to everything that's happening. We're deeply touched by your words and by your presence here today. We can see that as it's summer coming in here, it's winter coming on there. So you're on the opposite side of the earth, where the water churns backwards in the sink and going down the tub, because it's the opposite world down there.
Yeah, it's very cold here, Maharaj. I don't know what's the weather there. So is it too cold there as well?
No, we're California. Every day is perfect. Every day is perfect here.
Jai.
Just kidding. Thank you very much, Prashant Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Premanande Haribol. Well, now that I've run us into the wee hours of the night, with sadness in my heart, I bid adieu to all the devotees, because I'm going to really miss you. I'm so happy to see you all. I'd like to call you all out by name, but I'm rejoicing in my heart just the time we had together. And we'll see you for Nrsimha Chaturdasi on Tuesday. We're going to chant mantras. We're going to bathe the Lord. We're going to really lean into our celebration of Srila Narhari Dev. And then we have Shweka's initiation ceremony on Wednesday. That's a big deal here for all of us. And so we have a lot coming up, right? Gaur Premanande Haribo.
Sorry, Maharaj, before I let you go, what's the situation there? Is it like devotees are able to visit the temple and visit to each other's home?
We're just opening up a little bit at a time, little darshan by appointment, stuff like that. Slowly, slowly. Shanai Uparamed.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Did you give your email to somebody?
Yeah, so I gave it quickly. Yeah, to Shraddha, Devi Dasi Mataji.
All right, then you're good as gold then.
Yeah.
Everything will happen from that point. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Tai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Tai Gaur Premanande Haribo, Abdurashar Devacha, Patitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha.